It is so good to have all of you here. And I really, truly mean that. Fellowship is so much more than just talking. That we're breaking bread together, that we're opening up the Word together, that we're growing together, that we're like-minded, that we're worshiping the Most High together. And He had me all over the places as I was just preparing and praying and studying this morning, all over the place. And I'm like, where do you want to go today for a new song? And so I'm going to give you some scripture references because I want you to go on my little journey today on your own time. So read all of Habakkuk and Psalm chapter 12 and Isaiah 58 all the way to the end, to 66. And, Daniel chapter 6. I know it's a lot. And just the story of Esther and just the whole idea of for such a time as this. But with just all of this being that your words, Yahweh, they are pure. They have been tested. And we know that the symbol of the number 7, Charles, please interject if you've got some better nuggets for me, but it means the completion, the perfection of the Most High. Am I missing anything else about 7? Okay, it's used a lot throughout Scripture, so it's a very important number. And so in Psalms 12, it just talks about His words. They're just pure. And they've been tested in the fire like silver 7 times. And that's just that we can test Him. It is His words for all time are true, and that is something to stand firmly on, like with our faith when everything else is shaky around us. So, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of say the first part of Habakkuk chapter 2 before I get into the rest of the song. And Charles, I'm going to pass you my iPad as soon as I'm done that so we can get it out of my way. Abba, Father, we thank you, we thank you. Your words are true, we thank you. I will stand, this is Habakkuk speaking. I will stand upon my watch and mount upon the rock and watch to see what Yahweh will say by me. And what I shall answer when I am reproved by Him. And Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision and write it plainly. Plainly on a tablet that he that reads it may run. That he who reads it may run. For the vision is yet for a time, and it shall shoot forth at the end, and not in vain. Though he should tarry, wait for him, wait for him. For he shall surely come. Do you get it? He shall surely come, and he will not tarry. Now this is serious here. If we should draw back, Yahweh says that He has no pleasure in him, in that person. But here's the promise, but the just will live by faith, by emunah in Yahweh. But the just shall live by faith, by emunah in Yahweh. And even though we might not understand all the things that have been opened to us by the prophets, Yahweh, your words are true. Yahweh, your words are true. Are true, yeah. The words of Yah, the words of Yah are pure words, as silver tried in fire, proved in a furnace of the earth. Your words, oh Yahweh, are pure words, as silver tried in fire, purified 7 times. You, Yahweh, shall keep us and preserve us. You, Yahweh, shall keep us and preserve us from this generation and forever. From this generation and forever. Your words, your testaments, your promises, your judgments, your covenants, your ordinances, your precepts, they are true. We honor you, we trust in you, we am you now. We stand on your words. Sing with me once you know it. The words of Yahweh are pure words, as silver tried in fire, proved in a furnace of the earth. The words of Yahweh are pure words, as silver tried in fire, purified 7 times. You, Yahweh, shall keep us and preserve us from this generation and forever. From this generation and forever. But the just shall live by faith. But the just shall live by emunah. But the just shall live by emunah in Yahweh. But the just shall live by faith. But the just shall live by emunah. But the just shall live by emunah in Yahweh. But the just shall live by faith. But the just shall live by emunah. But the just shall live by emunah in Yahweh. We praise your holy name. This is a generation we choose to seek you, to seek your face. This is a generation of those that seek Him, to seek the face of Yaakov. This is where we pause. This is a generation of those that seek Him, to seek the face of Yaakov. This is where we pause. Who shall go up to the mountain of Yahweh and stand in His holy place? Who will go with me? Who shall go up to the mountain of Yahweh and stand in His holy place? He that is innocent in his hand and pure in his heart, and not lifted his soul to vanity, nor sworn to others deceitfully, he shall receive Yah's mercy and a blessing from Yah, our Savior. Our Savior. And Yeshua says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Yah and understand His ways. And understand His ways. Matthew 5:8 says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Yah and understand His ways. And understand His ways. Lift up your gates, you princes, be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Lift up your gates, you princes, be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? Yahweh, mighty, mighty. Yahweh, mighty in battle. Yahweh, Sabaoth. He is this King of glory, and the King of glory shall come in. He is this King of glory, and the King of glory shall come in. Oh, we are this generation. We want to seek You, we want to know You more, to seek Your face. This is a generation of those that seek Him, to seek the face of Yaakov. This is where we pause, Salah. This is where we pause. Oh, this is where we pause. We want to hear more of Your words, Your promises, Your truth. So from Your mouth, this is what You say to us from Jeremiah chapter 9. We want You to delight in us. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Sing it with me. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. This is what he says. Let not the wise one glory in his wisdom. Let not the strong one glory in his strength. Nor let the rich one glory in his riches. But let you glory in this. Glorious glory in this. We glory in this. Glory in this. Thus says Yahweh. 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 Let not the wise one glory in his wisdom. Let not the strong one glory in his strength. Nor let the rich one glory in his riches. But let Yahweh glory in this. Glory in this. You're so glorious. Glory in this. Glory in this. That you might know me and understand me. Thus says Yahweh. That you might know me and understand me. That I am Yahweh. Exercising loving kindness, righteousness and judgment in the earth. For in these things I delight, says Yahweh. Exercising loving kindness, righteousness and judgment in the earth. For in these things I delight, says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh. Yahweh, you have proved me, and you know me. You've known my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thoughts from afar. You have traced my path and foreseen all my ways, the first and the last. All of my days you have fashioned me and laid your hand upon me, upon me. Prove me, Yahweh, and know my heart, my inner man, and my will. Examine me and know my paths, and see if there is any way of iniquity in me, and lead me. See if there is any way of iniquity in me, and lead me. See if there is any way of iniquity in me, and lead me in an everlasting, It's still wonderful, 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 wonderful for me. Such knowledge is so wonderful, wonderful, oh, wonderful for me. It's still wonderful, wonderful. You're too wonderful, wonderful, wonderful for me. And that you love us. Wonderful. You want us to know you. Wonderful. And understand your ways. Wonderful for me. Just speak to him in the quietness of your heart. Just say it once again that you just want to hunger, you want to thirst, you want to know him more. You want to test him on the purity and the truth of his word. We're emunah. We're certainty. We are certainty in the certainty of who you are and whose we are. So wonderful. Teach me your paths, oh Yahweh. Remember your compassions and your mercies from everlasting. Lead me. Sing it again. Lead me. In your truth and teach me. For you are my authority, my Savior. I have waited on thee all the day. Show me your ways. This is our heart's cry every day. Oh Yahweh, my soul. Oh Yahweh, to you I have lifted up my soul. To you I have lifted up my soul. All I have, to you, all I am, I have lifted up my soul. Oh Yahweh, to you I have lifted up my soul. Glorious, glorious, we're singing glorious. Glory, glorious, 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 we're singing glorious. Glory, glorious, let his name be blessed forever. His name shall endure before the sun. All the tribes of the earth shall be blessed in him. Let his name be blessed forever. His name shall endure before the sun. All the nations shall call him blessed. Blessed is Yahweh, Elohim of Israel. Glorious, glorious, we're singing glorious. Glory, glorious, 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 we're singing glorious. Glory, glorious, let his name be blessed forever. His name shall endure before the sun. And all the tribes of the earth shall be blessed in him. Let his name be blessed forever. His name shall endure before the sun. All the nations shall call him blessed. Blessed is Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, who alone does wonders. And blessed is his glorious name forever, even forever and ever. Blessed is your name, Yah, who alone does wonders. Blessed is his glorious name forever, even forever. Blessed is your name, Yah. It is your name, Yah. Blessed is your name, Yah. Blessed is your name, Yah. Blessed is your name, Yah. So be it, so be it. Blessed is your name, Yah. Blessed is your name, Yah. So be it, so be it. All the earth shall be filled with his glory. All the earth shall be filled with his glory. All the earth shall be filled with his glory. So be it, so be it. All the earth shall be filled with his glory. All the earth shall be filled with his glory. All the earth, all the earth, all the earth shall be filled with his glory. So be it, so be it, so be it, so be it, so be it. Blessed is your name, Yah. Blessed is your name, Yah. peoples praise you. That your way may be known on earth. Your salvation among all nations. Oh, be glad and sing for joy, all nations. Shall judge and rule the people. Then the earth shall yield or increase. Our own Yah shall bless us. Be merciful to us. Your face to shine upon us, being merciful, Yahweh, be merciful to us and bless us, and cause your face to shine upon us, being merciful, Yah. Be merciful. Within me, everything Bless his holy, all that is within me, all that is within me, all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless his holy name. Bless your holy name. Thank you that, Yahweh, you inhabit the praises of your people. Continue to just bless us with your presence. And open hearts, open minds. Just to hear what your words that stand the test of time have been purified 7 times perfection. So that we can just know you more. In your name, through Yeshua. So be it.
So good night, everyone. I have no high notes within me, but I do have peace within me. So thank you all for coming out tonight.
If Levi pokes you hard enough, you might have a high note.
No, I don't have high notes. So tonight, Monday, the 15th of October, 2018, I hope everyone is doing well. And we're going to be jumping into Genesis chapter 17. And this is part 1, as this chapter is split potentially into 2 parts. So the title of tonight's study is My Covenant.
Sorry, Darwin, can you read for a second?
Okay.
That's tickling my throat now.
So, worship the wrong way. So our news piece tonight is based on that picture that we have before us. So the title is Be Holy. For this piece I'm going to read. Holy, 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 Yahuwah Almighty. In his epistle, 1 Peter chapter 1, 15 to 16, and this is from the KJV, Peter is declaring to the audience.
But as he which has called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation, because it is written, Be you holy, for I am holy. Peter may have been referencing the following passage from Leviticus 11:44. For I am Yahweh your Elohim. You shall be sanctified, and you shall be holy, because I, Yahweh your Elohim, am holy. And you shall not defile your souls with any of the reptiles creeping upon the earth.
Starting this study with such seriousness is not to hit people over the head, but to draw our attention to some of the practices that may be considered holiness to some. In January, a relic was brought to Calgary as part of a cross-Canada tour for the item. The relic is the arm of a Roman Catholic luminary called Saint Francis, and not the current one that's sitting on the papal throne. And this article is from Drew Anderson from CBC News, and it was posted on January 21st, 2018, and it's titled The Arm of St. Francis Will Join Many Saintly Bits and Pieces Already in Calgary. The severed right forearm and hand of St. Francis Xavier, is in Calgary as part of a cross-Canada tour, a more significant and bulky relic than the many bits that already called the city home.
There are little pieces of saints spread all across Calgary. Is that correct? Little pieces of saints?
Yep.
Okay.
That's
spread all across Calgary, tucked away in Catholic altars. But the DIOS doesn't have a full record of who's here and where their bits might be. Placing these items in altars is a practice that dates back to the earliest days of Christianity, when it was outlawed in the Roman Empire, so believers hid in catacombs to perform Mass. While they were doing this over time, there were many martyrs. So those Christians who were apprehended and then executed for their faith, and they would naturally be buried in these catacombs, said Reverend Cristino Bouvet, the director of vocations for the Calgary DIOS. Trying not to be too critical, what does having dead men bones intermingled with the living have to do with holiness? Unfortunately, many revere these relics as holy and pay devotion to them. As our holy Elohim says in Isaiah 52:11, Depart ye, depart, go out from thence. and touch not the unclean thing. Go you out from the midst of her. Separate yourselves, ye that bear the vessels of Yahuwah. Let us honor our holy Elohim and strive towards his standards of holiness as our steadfast walk with him continues.
So as some of us already know, anything that is dead is considered to be unclean, and it has no place in a sanctuary. But it is what it is, and you'll see how this ties into the Bible study tonight.
And someday when we get to Leviticus, we'll get more into clean and unclean.
Yeah, clean and unclean. So we begin with chapter 17, 1 to 4.
And Abraham was 99 years old, and Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said to him, I am your authority. Be well-pleasing before me and be blameless, and I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell upon his face, and Elohim spoke to him, saying, I behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of a multitude of nations.
So this section is called Setting the Record Straight. For a moment, let us go backwards before moving forward to recap the milestone moments of Abram. So Abram heard the voice of YHWH Elohim at age 75, and that was in Genesis 12:4. Abram was told that he would become a great nation from that point. So Abram and Lot part ways, that was in Genesis 13:8. Subsequently, YHWH Elohim speaks to Abram again, and that is in 13:14, and promises the land that he was standing upon, as far as Abram could see from his location. So where Abram stood, he was told to look around. He was also instructed to traverse the length and breadth of the land. Then Abram defeats the eastern kings and rescues his nephew Lot, because we know Lot ended up in a really tight situation. And he also encounters the Melchizedek in Genesis 14. Right. The word of Yahuwah appears to Abram in Genesis 15. A promise of his son is made, his seed being multiplied, and the land again. The covenant of the pieces is ratified between Abram and YHWH Elohim, because Abram wants to know for a certainty it is real. So that is covered in Genesis 15:8. And he said, Master and Lord, how shall I know that I shall inherit it? And then the last part is something that I neglected from last week. Then Sara and Abram took matters into their own hands in Genesis 16. The result is conflict in the tent of Abram. Abram is now 86 years old. So we see he began at 75, now he's 86, so some time has elapsed, which is 11 years after being called out of his kindred and being told that he would become a nation. An addendum to Genesis 16 study is that Hagar would have been given to Sara back in Genesis 12. I forgot to mention that. When she was in the house of Pharaoh, when he made her one of his wives.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I never ever put that piece together.
Yeah, it's one of those things people would miss, but and this is customs. You get handmaidens when you enter these houses of prominence. So Hagar would have had a handmaiden or lady in waiting role to Sara. After Sara was restored to Abram, Hagar would have stayed on attending to Sarah. So that's the connection with how Sarah, Pharaoh, Abram, and Hagar all had that situation back in Genesis 12. So that's something we need to tie a little bow on. So now, continuing to set the record straight.
Why go back before moving forward? Simple. There's a pattern of actions taking place. YHWH Elohim and Abram are two parties having a dialogue. YHWH Elohim made a series of promises to Abram, and a close examination of their interactions is needed in light of the many doctrines about the place of the Old Testament. There is a key word in each narrative to pay attention to: my. Every covenant that is made belongs to YHWH Elohim, which means that he is the only one that can amend or disannul any aspect of it with the other party, Abram. Let's look at some aspects of basic law of contracts.
And before we move on, Sarah, can I ask you a question? Can I put you on the spot? How familiar are you with copyright law? Not that familiar?
Not terribly familiar.
Okay. Because in copyright law, whoever owns the copyright have the right to alter it.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. So hence the reason the my. It belongs to him. He's the only one that has the right to alter it. So you're going to see how law plays into this aspect with Abram. Okay, so this is on Canadian law, but law of contracts is standard anywhere you go. It does not typically change. It doesn't matter where you are. So Canadian Law 15, Elements of a Contract by R. Schroeder from Northlands Parkway Collegiate. What is a contract?
A contract is an agreement between two or more parties that is enforceable by law. In order for a contract to be considered valid, there must be
Offer and acceptance. And we saw offer and acceptance taking place between Abraham and Yahuwah. Just play it back in your mind and you'll see all these elements taking place. There's consideration, there's capacity, there's consent, and then there is lawful purpose. Pay attention to everything that you see in that whole narrative with the two parties.
Okay, offer, acceptance, consideration. In every valid contract, offer, acceptance, and consideration are vital aspects. First, an offer is made that contains all of the important and relevant terms of the contract. Second, another party agrees to or accepts the offer.
So going back, we see there's child, there is land, there is I am going to make you a nation. These are a lot of things that is being built into this agreement that is formulating here. So the two parties, we know who they are. There is Abram, there is YHWH Elohim, the two parties in this situation that is unfolding. Continue.
Third, after the offer is accepted, something of value, an item or service, is exchanged between the parties involved in the contract. This is called consideration.
Right. So what's that thing of value that was exchanged between the two? I would make an assumption it's Abraham's life because that's something that is of value. And again, when you go back and you see everything that's taking place, you can put it all together. So capacity, consent, lawful purpose.
In every valid contract, both parties must have the ability or capacity to understand the terms and nature of the contract.
So question, did Abram understand the terms of what he was getting into before he gave his consent to it? We can say yes because everything moved forward.
Each party involved in the contract must also freely consent or agree to the terms in the agreement.
So Abram did not disagree, say, fine, it was okay, let's move forward.
Finally, every contract that is negotiated in Canada and
anywhere for that matter
must have a lawful purpose or objective. In other words, no contract can violate any law.
So since Yahuwah is the law supreme, he's not violating anything that he is saying.
He's the lawgiver.
He's the lawgiver. Right. So types of contracts.
An express contract is a legal agreement in which the terms are transparent and known to all the parties involved. Example, a mortgage with a bank.
Right. So in the agreement between the two, are all the terms known between each party? Is it convoluted or is it transparent? We can say it's transparent because Abraham knew what he was getting into.
An implied contract is a contract that is implied or inferred by the party's conduct. Example, at a restaurant, it's implied that after eating dinner, the customer will pay the bill.
Not a 5-finger discount?
Dine and dash? No. Next, most contracts are under seal, a formal written contract that is signed, witnessed, and marked with a seal.
All right, and when you get into law, you'll understand why all of these components are very important in deeds and every other type of contracts that is out there.
So with the covenant of the pieces, the seal would have been?
What would the seal would have been?
Would it have been the pieces and the blood?
Yeah.
That was shed?
Yep.
That would have been the seal.
Because back in the day, people used to prick their finger and put their thumbprint to denote that this is signed in blood. Yep.
A simple contract is a contract that is not under seal, and that's verbal, written, or implied.
Right. So I come to you and I said, if I give you 3 plants, you'll give me 2 fruit. That's verbal. We exchange. It's legally binding. But when we get into the fine print of law, somebody could say it's hearsay if there's a dispute because it was only the 2 of us that knows. But if a man is of integrity, he's not going to go back on his word. But a court of law will determine whether or not these things, whether it's written or verbal, is legally standing. Okay, so side note, the Bible in English culture.
Influence on the law. The Bible features heavily in the architecture and decoration of the Houses of Parliament, paying silent tribute to its significance in English
Jurisprudence.
Many old parish churches still have copies of the Ten Commandments on the walls, underlining the importance of the Bible for providing the moral cohesion of society. Most British law is ultimately derived from the codes of law within the Bible, of which the Ten Commandments is preeminent. The equality of all people before the law is another of its legacies.
Right, so where the law is concerned, a lot of the law that currently governs the land is derived from the Bible. Case in point, weights and measures. If you do not have fair weights and measures in the Bible, it's an abomination. If you go to a store and you pay for 1 pound of wheat, you're supposed to get 1 pound of wheat. Anything less is breaking the law. So a lot of these weights and measure laws is actually derived out of the Bible. And that the way how it's worded in the Bible helps shape the legal narrative that is now enforced where whatever weights and measures, murder, or any other thing in the law is concerned.
And this might be a good time just to say, which most know, Ten Commandments probably translates better into God's matters, ten matters, which are expounded upon in the other books of the law.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we are still setting the record straight.
Returning to the covenant of the pieces in Genesis 15, there is a unique situation happening with Abram. Abram is put into a special type of sleep. This can also represent the death and resurrection of Abraham as it pertains to the parties of the agreement. Whether Abram is dead or alive, the agreement is enforced between the two parties, and no third party can make changes to it as they see fit.
So Genesis 17:4, my covenant is with thee, and keyword is my. Not Daniel's, not James, but my, meaning the Most High. Putting Abram to sleep is symbolic in many ways, but signifies that Abraham, dead or alive, his covenant, YHWH Elohim, is with him. So, whatever state Abraham is in, this covenant is legally binding. And there is the covenant of the pieces as it's represented in image. So we're still setting the record straight, and this leads us to the Anointed One clarifying to the religious leaders of his time about life and death. So and this is Mark 12:26-27, and we're reading from the KJV.
And as touching the dead, that they rise. Have you not read in the book of Moses how in the bush Elohim spoke unto him, saying, I am the Yahuwah of Abraham. I am the Elohim of Isaac and the Elohim of Jacob. He is not the Elohim of the dead, but the Elohim of the living. Ye therefore greatly do err.
So we had that discussion talking about what life is in the nefesh, and if your spirit belongs to the Most High, it doesn't matter if you are in that state of called death, you are still alive. From a what I'll try to use is from a figurative perspective, but he's not the Elohim or the God of the dead, which is something different. Those who are soulless and are condemned for the final death. So that's more or less what is being talked about here, about life and death. And Abraham is, for a better explanation, alive still, even though he's asleep in the grave, because he's going to be resurrected one day. Additionally, YHWH Elohim declares to Abraham that he is El Shaddai, and to walk before me and be perfect or blameless. There is a reason why he is El Shaddai to Abram. Abram is not yet a nation. He's still an individual walking the land. And there is direct interaction between Abraham and YHWH Elohim. There is no middleman between the two of them. Two of them interact directly.
El Shaddai means God Almighty. It also does mean God of the mountain too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. El Shaddai in Hebrew, or just Shaddai, is one of the names of the authority of Israel. El Shaddai is conventionally translated as Elohim Almighty, but the construction of the phrase fits the pattern of the divine appellations in the ancient Near East, and as such can convey various types of semantic relations between these two words. El, of a place known as Shaddai. El, possessing the quality of Shaddai, or El, who is also known as Shaddai, exactly as is the case with the names like El Olam, El Elyon, or El Betel. Moreover, while the translation of El as God or Lord in the Ugaritic Canaanite language is straightforward, the literal meaning of Shaddai is the subject of debate. The name appears 48 times in the Bible, 7 times as El Shaddai, 5 times in Genesis, once in Exodus, and once in Ezekiel.
And just a side note, I was going to try to see how I could have fit this word into the study. El Olam, well, more Olam. Olam tends to be translated as eternity or universe or something that is far-reaching that you cannot grasp. So, Olam. But look, it's right there. Okay, so we are in Genesis 17, 5-8.
And your name shall no longer be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham.
Finally, we can say Abraham without stumbling.
For I have made you a father of many nations, and I will increase you very exceedingly. And I will make nations of you, and kings shall come out of you, and I will establish my covenant between you and your seed after you, to their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be your God, and the Elohim of your seed after you. And I will give to you and to your seed after you the land wherein you sojourn, even all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be to them an Elohim.
Here's the word Olam. O-L-A-M in Hebrew, right here. And for those who might be listening in, if you look at the fourth line of Hebrew, it's the 1, 2, 3, fourth word in from the left. So that's forever. Doesn't end. Olam. Okay, so a new name. Abram, which is translated as exalted father, is no longer to be known as Abram, the name given to him by his father Terah, but Abraham or Avraham, depending on which phonetics you use, father of a multitude. The name given to him by his new and true father, which is YHWH Elohim. His previous name sounds a bit blasphemous as he is being equated to Elohim, and we're going to see why. So Matthew chapter 23, verse 8-10, and we're reading from the Tree of Life version, which is a Messianic Bible, and I'm purposely reading from this to point out a few things.
But you are not to be called Rabbi, for one is your teacher, great one, and you are all brothers, and call no man on earth your father, for one is your Father, who is in heaven. Nor are you to be called teachers, more, for one is your teacher, the Messiah, or the Mashiach.
Right, so the first word, rabbi, does not mean teacher, as they would tell you in Messianic circles. That's incorrect. Rabbi means great one. With the yod at the end of the word Rav, means my great one. Not teacher. Anybody tells you that it means teacher, call them out on it. Does not mean that. And that word is used to describe the great lights in the sky from in Genesis. So,
The same word?
Yep, Rav. When you add the yod at the end of Rav, you get rabbi. My great one. We only have one great one. So I put that great one in so that you know what that word rabbi means. And nobody should be called rabbi, but we know how it is. Nothing more to say. Right, next word, we know father, and we know that's typically used in the Catholic faith. We're not supposed to call anybody father in that authoritative position of of religious authority. That's not designated to them. And the last one is more, which means teacher. That's why, in our first Bible study, Davene and I made it very clear, we are none of those things.
No titles.
None. We are just information givers. We are giving you a perception of how we see things from the scripture.
You're information presenters.
Yeah. That's it. No title. His name being changed is a transition from one life to another, from the God of his father to the Elohim of Elohims. His El Shaddai assuming authority over his life and the successive generations that would come after. He is again told by YHWH Elohim that he is going to be fruitful, or he would be increased exceedingly. So he's going to be fruitful, him Abraham, and we know that happened eventually, and his seed is going to be increased exceedingly.
I should say and or.
Yeah, and or, yeah. So, continuing with a new name.
Jumping ahead. Abraham has children after his wife Sara dies with another woman and never went into Hagar again. The preamble, or the legal aims and justification.
Right, so that's a big word I use, but Davene complains, you use big words and don't tell us the meaning. So I'm giving the meaning to these big words.
Of the covenant is to be inherited by Abraham's successive generations through his son of promise as an everlasting agreement. In other words, an inheritance clause is built into the covenant with Abraham. That everlasting promise has to do with the land Abraham was promised, and that he, YHWH, would be the authority, the God or the Elohim, over them. When Israel becomes a nation, YHWH Elohim would become Elohim over them. For the moment, he is El Shaddai to Abraham.
Mm-hmm. When I figured this out, I said, wow, it was so simple in front of my face all the time.
Maybe you could, can you explain that a little bit? What's so significant about that? I'm maybe having some trouble understanding.
When there are titles being used here, right, and how are titles applied? So when you see Abraham, especially when you get to the debate of whether you should declare the name of the Most High or not, people would tend to use this as an argument that El Shaddai is his name, and that's technically not correct. What is happening here is about who is your authority over you. And you have to remember about when we spoke about in Genesis 16 about the different gods having authority over different lands. Abraham was called out from one authority, and he's heading into a place that he does not know. Who is the authority over him then? He's not a nation, right? He's speaking with Yah directly, and there is no middleman between him and Yah where anything is concerned.
So would it be kind of like, because back in, if you want to look at the supernatural worldview back in that day, is like wherever you were kind of was the it was sort of the jurisdiction of those gods of that area, and if you moved somewhere, so he wasn't really anywhere yet.
No, he was being called out. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Now I understand.
Right, and now, because of this agreement, I am now this authority over you. I now have that place in your life, and again, has to do with contracts. Abraham agreed to it. He was not coerced, he was not forced. Simple agreement. So questions. Given current historical records, how many Abrahamic nations exist? Do we know that for a certainty? How many nations can attribute their origins to Abraham with certainty, apart from those who claim to be Israel? Those who are in the Muslim faith will say, Abraham is our father, but can you take their word for a certainty?
Because you've got Ishmael, and then you've got the children he had with Keturah, right?
Yep. So hence his seed, we're seeing something taking place here with Abraham. How many kings outside of Israel lineage can be attributed to Abram, apart from the kings of Edom as well? How many can you finger point and say, okay, many kings did come out of you? And last, are the promises past or future in fulfillment? And there's a reason why I ask these questions, because if you can nail it down, bring the information so we can view. Otherwise, we have to look at it from two perspectives. It's either it has been fulfilled already, or it's still to be fulfilled.
Can it be both?
To some degree. Okay. So we are in Genesis 17, 9 and 10.
And God said to Abraham, you also shall fully keep my covenant, you and your seed after you for their generations. And this is the covenant which you shall fully keep between me and you, and between your seed after you for their generations. Every male of you shall be circumcised.
Where's my little thing? Good, beautiful. Yes, it's a family study, but this is a real picture. It's a real picture from Egypt, and there's a reason why it's there. Abraham is told that he and his seed, the inheritance clause, are to keep his covenant. Being a patriarchal society, the sign of the covenant is through the male seed of Abraham, which every male under his tent must receive. The built-in clause of this covenant between El Shaddai and Abraham is immediately in effect. So this is a circumcision ritual taking place here in the land of Egypt. And this is a very popular picture that they use when they're debating circumcision and everything else from an Eastern Semitic and Hamitic perspective, not from a religious or Christian perspective or messianic.
Because there's many others.
Yes. Yeah. Right, so Genesis 17, 11, and 12.
And you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be for a sign of covenant between me and you. And the child of 8 days old shall be circumcised by you, every male throughout your generations. And the servant born in the house, and he that is bought with money, of every son of a stranger who is not of your seed.
Right, so we see who is covered under the arrangement that is being made. So there are a number of people, homeborn, those who bought with money, the stranger. Those are the parties that are covered under this agreement. And we saw what was the sign in the previous picture, to have that flesh on your nether regions removed. So circumcision, the law and New Testament belief, and this is where most of the controversy lies with this Bible study, because we have to go through this part. All right. There are 6 issues that creates conflict in the tent of believers. So I'm making up a comparison between Abraham's tent and everybody in faith. So there's the referee parting the 2 fighting parties. So the first one is the day of worship. Depending on which side of the fence you are, this is a big issue or minor issue. The next one is keeping the feast.
Keeping the feasts, like
Feast.
plural?
Yeah, plural,
Okay.
yes. Eating biblically. We already covered this one, the name of Yahuwah. Keeping the law or Torah. And last, what we're going to be discussing, circumcision tonight. So outside of Genesis 17, only in the Pauline epistles is the issue broached. And broach means sensitive or difficult topic. Many believers are very familiar with the listed issues, and the question of circumcision garners heated discussion in favor or against. So wherever you fall on the doctrinal line, you're either one or the other. So continuing, a reminder, few things to keep in mind with Paul or Saul, depending on how you call him, when he addresses these issues in his epistles. Who was the audience and the context of his responses? That's the thing you need to keep in mind. So our focus is going to be on his audience. So first passage of scripture, Romans 11, 12 to 13, and everything here is from the KJV.
Now if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify my office.
Okay, so here in Romans we see Paul is saying who he is speaking to, who he was sent to, the Gentiles. So that's one. Ephesians 3, 1 to 2.
For this cause I, Paul, the prisoner of YHWH, Mashiach, for you Gentiles, if you have heard of the dispensation of the grace of Elohim, which is given me to you, word.
Again, here he's saying who he's speaking to, who he's addressing. Galatians 2, 7.
But contrariwise, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed unto me, as the gospel of the circumcision was unto Peter.
So here Paul is saying who is talking to who. Peter is dealing with those in the house of Abraham, well, in the house of Israel, not the house of Abraham, but Israel.
Did you just say Peter is dealing with those in Israel? I just want to clarify.
Yes, Peter, yeah.
Okay.
And Paul is dealing with the Gentiles. His mouth again. And here...
You can't be of Israel and you can't be a Gentile at the same time.
No, you can't.
No, just clarifying.
Yeah, right. So here in 2 Peter 3, 15 to 16, we have Peter saying something about Paul.
An account that the suffering of our Yahuwah, is that Yahuwah there?
I would say he might be saying...
Yeshua there.
Yeah.
Okay. On an account that the suffering of our Yeshua is salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul, also according to the wisdom given unto him, has written unto you, as also in all his epistles, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood, which they are...
unlearned,
Yeah,
that are unlearned and unstable rest as they do also the other scriptures unto their own destruction. So we know that there is a lot of debate about Paul's epistles. For me, I know a lot of people mess it up because they are not referencing where he is speaking from. So we have conflict. And here's a warning from Peter, those who don't know where it's coming. And again, it's coming from the scriptures, not off of Paul's head. He's getting it from somewhere. They do it to their own destruction.
So there is a lot of misinterpretation of Paul, unfortunately.
And it is what it is. And now we're in 1 Timothy 2, verse 7.
Whereunto I am ordained a preacher and an apostle. I speak the truth in Messiah, and lie not. A teacher of the Gentiles in faith and verity. Right,
so again, he's clarifying who he is speaking to, the audience that he is giving instructions on to, the Gentiles, not the house of Israel. Clearly in his epistles, Paul or Saul is addressing issues presented to him from a group of people that have no clue about Torah, prophets, and writings, and how it pertains to them.
Can you just stop there? Just to clarify, Torah, prophets, and writings basically is the Old Testament.
And at that point in time, the New Testament was not codified, and these people were relying on others to help them understand what is taking place. And when we get further into the study, you would see the problems that was taking place. Can you continue?
Yep. That's the optics that readers should approach in his epistles, or the letters to the Gentiles. We're not going to address the epistles of Saul or Paul, as at this time TeamD referenced teachings by Torah class, which we've encouraged everyone to study along with, and Arthur Bailey, his Galatians study, which is a 28 study, very extensive resources addressing all of Paul's epistles. For our study, it's important to mention Saul or Paul, as he is the only entity in the Bible
that addresses circumcision.
But you would say in the New Testament.
In the New Testament specifically. Yeah. So continuing now, Abraham, fully under the authority of YHWH Elohim, is told to circumcise himself, which I would be scared to do, and everyone in his household as a token of the covenant. So now we're asking what is circumcision, or moal, and we'll revisit this word a little later in the study, this word moal. So circumcision basics from WebMD.
So first we had a picture, now we get a verbal description. Okay. Circumcision is the surgical removal of the foreskin, the tissue covering the head glands of the penis. You should be reading this, not me.
Okay, I will read it. Yeah. The tissue covering the glands, which is whatever, of the penis. It is an ancient practice that has its origins in religious rites. Today, many parents have their sons circumcised for religious or other reasons. When is circumcision done? Circumcision is usually performed on the first or second day after birth. Among the Jewish population, circumcision is performed on the 8th day.
Jewish meaning religious, correct?
Yep.
This is not a rated. This Bible study has not yet been rated. So just, yeah.
The procedure becomes more complicated and riskier in older babies, children, and men. Right. So continuing, answers from the Bible to questions about circumcision. And this is taken from a person by the name of Michael Glass from 2002. And the reason why I'm using it is because if you were to read the whole thing, which I'd love for you to do after the fact, it will help you understand the narrative that is shaped from a doctrinal perspective on this issue. And there are certain areas I'm going to chime in to sort of explain why there are certain areas where he's not that correct.
Circumcision is as controversial today as it was in the New Testament times. Then, as now, it could tear marriages and families apart. Fortunately, insights we can gain from the Bible about circumcision can guide us today. What is circumcision? Circumcision
cuts off the foreskin, the sexually sensitive sleeve of tissue that commonly covers and protects the part of the penis. Mm-hmm. Is circumcision today the same as circumcision in the Bible? Now, according to this source that he's referencing, the Oxford Dictionary of the Jewish Religion traces the origin of Peria, the bearing of the glands, to the time of Herodian. And I'm not going to quote the time. So moving on. Many Hellenistic Jews, so those Hellenistic meaning Greek, that's the scholarly term that they tend to use, Hellenistic.
And Hellenistic was sort of from the Greek or Yavin.
Yes.
Kind of Greece.
Yes,
Or,
yeah. All right, so many Hellenistic Jews, particularly those who participated in athletics at the gymnasium, and I wouldn't get into what a gymnasium truly is, it's not what they tell you, had an operation performed to conceal the fact of their circumcision. And you can read this in 1 Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 15. Similar action was taken during the Hadrianic persecution, in which period a prohibition against circumcision was issued. It was probably in order to prevent the possibility of obliterating the traces of circumcision that the rabbis, and I should have put that in quotes, but it's not my words, added to the requirement of cutting the foreskin, that of Peria, laying bare of the glands. The Oxford Dictionary of Jewish Religion, that's the source. Right. The New Testament predates the development seen in 1 Corinthians 7:18. Medical circumcision developed from the latter, more radical rite. So today, infants...
Later, you mean? Later, not the
sorry,
latter.
later, more radical rite. Sorry about that. So today's infant circumcisions are more severe than circumcisions in the Bible. And I can't say for certain because I never saw the two happen. Okay, so who can be circumcised?
Abraham, his descendants, and those who were bought with their money, meaning like slaves or...
Yes,
okay.
or servants.
Yep. Also, all the males of a household were to be circumcised if one of them wanted to join in the Passover celebrations.
That's eventually when you get to Exodus, but
yeah.
when we get there, we could look at it a little bit more. Now, before Davene reads this, I purposely bolded this section because it's not all that accurate. So...
However, there is a puzzle. Laws commanding circumcision are said to come through Moses.
Which is not correct. But the children of Israel abandoned circumcision during Moses' leadership, which is also not correct. Exodus 4:24-26 tells us that Moses had not circumcised his own son, which is correct. Now, let me break this down here. Moses did not give anything about circumcision, and we'll hear Yeshua talking about that. That was the agreement between Yah and Abraham, not Moses. Moses was just a pen that put everything on paper for us to read. First error here. The children of Israel did not abandon circumcision, otherwise Moses would not have been circumcised and called by the Most High. He would have been circumcised as well. What happened is when Moses left Egypt, he was disenchanted, and out there he didn't care what happened. So he did not circumcise his sons, and when we get to that passage, we'll see it as well. But his wife, who is of the house of Abram as well, because she was a Midianite, would have been very much aware of circumcision, as her father was also a priest. So on the way, she circumcised her children to avoid Moses being dealt with by that angel that came. So they would have known Moses was just as enchanted. He forgot to circumcise his child. Right. And the situation with Joshua is that Israel committed the sin of the golden calf, and they were punished to be walking in the wilderness for 40 years, and that generation was to die off. None of them, except for Caleb and Joshua, were allowed to go into the land. So while they were wandering the wilderness, they didn't have to do anything until they go to possess the land. So hence Joshua doing the circumcision before they entered the land. And if you read the narrative carefully, you'll see exactly that was the situation. They were not also keeping the feast in the wilderness either. It's not until they entered the land that everything kicked in. It's an agreement for the land, circumcision, so they had to be circumcised.
This suggests several scribal traditions. In the first, Moses did not practice circumcision, and the custom was abandoned under his leadership. That's not true, is it?
No, it's
In the
not.
second,
No.
his wife is made to conform to the practice. That's not true.
That's not true, no.
Finally, in the third tradition, he's given the command to circumcise from Yahuwah himself.
And again, here the word, that's why I underline tradition. Tradition is not truth.
No.
Okay, did circumcision apply to anyone else? Okay.
Circumcision applied to the slaves of Jews. Apart from that, circumcision never applied to people outside the Jewish faith. The first covenant was not with other nations. All other people were described as uncircumcised, even those who practiced circumcision. And you can look at Jeremiah 9:25 and 26. Circumcision never applied to Christians. Acts 15:5-11. The Apostle Peter, who is circumcised, said, "We believe that we will be saved through the grace of the Lord Jesus, just as they will." Acts 15:11.
Now, what this guy did here is academic. He was lazy. He could have gone. So we are going to be going into Acts 15:5-11. I'm going to read it in context to see what is happening. Should Christians follow the law of Moses?
No. This is what he's saying.
Yeah.
No, Christians were freed from the law, including circumcision. It was described as an almost unbearable yoke on the neck in Acts 15:10. The yoke, of course, was a sign of slavery, and Christians were told not to become entangled with the yoke of bondage. Galatians 5:1 and 2.
So let's ask a question. If Christians are free from the law, when were they in bondage to it?
That's a good question. I never thought of it that way.
You have to be in bondage to something to be freed from it. So that's a question you need to ask based on the narrative that this person put forward. So I give an answer. A better phrasing should have been Christians were not subject to the law. Words have meaning, and the way how you convey words would shape the narrative in people's mind. So
You're just quoting what he's saying.
no, but I am giving an answer for him. How he should have referenced it.
Okay.
It should have never been freed from the law, because I would ask the question, when were you bondage to the law? They were never in bondage to the law. And a better phrasing, as I'm saying, should be Christians were not subject to the law. Big difference. He should have used those words. Okay.
Where are we?
Yeah,
As
okay.
just narrated, the topic of the Old Testament is continuous, and Paul, go ahead,
No, sorry.
is typically used to broach any discussion to justify doctrinal belief. Hence, referencing his words at the beginning of this section as it relates to the audience he was addressing, Gentiles. As stated previously, Saul or Paul is the only New Testament figure to address this issue, circumcision, with depth in his epistles. Unfortunately, the words of Peter echo loudly as many a person rests with Saul or Paul writing without grasping the context and audience he was addressing. Abraham is further instructed to circumcise every male child from 8 days old and to be carried out in each successive generation. The inheritance clause. The inheritance clause is seen in action many generations later when the anointed one, who is Yeshua, is circumcised.
So Luke 2:21 and 22, and this is from the KJV. And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Jesus, or Yeshua, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days of her purification, according to the law of Moses, were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. So on the 8th day, he would have been circumcised. If he was not circumcised, he would not have any connection to the land. If you have no connection to the land, you cannot be king over a land. Land and kingship are connected. They are not inseparable.
That makes sense.
And that is legal. You can go in British law and you can see that for yourself. Hence, you have serfs and all these other classifications in a society, especially in British society. So you have the lords, who are the landowners, and they are covered under different acts of parliament. Even here in Canada, those acts are still enforced from Britain here in Canada, especially with the dividing up of each of these provinces.
So in that way, we're basically given a beautiful picture, if we can, well, I guess I should say that hesitantly, because law in the world is very broken and perverse, but it can be. But the idea of just how it works And that's the picture that we can use as far as those first 5 books that we've been given, you know. So it's to use that to conduct our affairs and to be a part of the kingdom.
Right.
Under.
And 2, if he's not circumcised, he's not connected to King David. And then we spoke about the Melchizedek and how all those things play together with him becoming that future king that we're looking forward to. So, yeah.
As most people in the Messianic community are aware, around the time of the Anointed One's birth was the Feast of Tabernacles, or Booths, or Sukkot, which is an 8-day celebration. He would have been circumcised on the last day of the feast, the 8th day. You didn't take my edit for that one. This would have given his parents the opportunity to present him to YHWH at the temple as they were in Jerusalem for the feast celebrations. Men are required to be at the feast in Jerusalem. For women,
It is optional.
It is optional.
Right, so where the feasts are concerned, the 3 pilgrimage feasts, men have to go.
Can you refresh our memory? What are the 3 feasts that are the pilgrimage feasts?
Okay, so there is Passover, there is Pentecost or Shavuot, and then there is the Feast of Booths, Sukkot. Those are the 3 pilgrimage feasts. All men are required to go up to Jerusalem. It's not optional. Women, it's optional.
This is when they're in the land, though.
Yes, when they're in the land, yes. And you can see that with Samuel. When Samuel was born, his mother did not go up to the feast the year after he was born. She stayed home and weaned him. She was not. But the men have to go. But when Samuel came of age, he did not have a choice. He has to go up. Okay, the Anointed One also had to address an issue of circumcision with the people, mainly the religious leaders of his day. And this is in John 7:14-24.
Now, about the midst of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple, and that feast would have been?
I can't remember which one it is, but it could have been...
Anyone know what feast that was?
Could have been Sukkot.
Okay.
Could have been, yeah.
Went up into the temple and taught. And the Jews, the religious leaders, marveled, saying, "How knows this man letters, having never learned?" And Jesus, or Yeshua, answered them and said, "My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or Elohim, or whether I speak of myself. He that speaks of himself sees his own glory, but he that seeketh his glory that sent him," which is YHWH, "the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moses give you the law? And yet none of you keep the law? Why do you go about to kill me?" The people answered and said, "You have a devil. Who goes about to kill you?" Yeshua, Jesus, answered and said to them, "I have done one work, and you all marvel. Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers."
Okay, and that's why I bold that it's not of Moses. We conflate things too much. It's of the fathers. The agreement with Yah and Abraham. Continue.
"And you on the Sabbath day circumcise a man."
Stop there. This is the key word, a man. Not a child, a man.
"If a man on the Sabbath day receives circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are you angry at me because I made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath day? Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment."
So he's equating 2 situations here. Religious rituals, when they go through to convert a man. And if you remember that...
This would fall in the guise of like traditions. This is not from the law.
This is not from that agreement with Abraham and YHWH Elohim. It's their stuff that they created. And there's that you compass land and sea to convert somebody and make him 10 times the son of hell. You can equate it back to that because of their religious traditions that they were putting on the people. That's the yoke, not the Torah.
Yeah, that's key. The religious traditions are the yoke, not the law, not those first 5 books.
Yeah. What is taking place here? A confrontation between the Anointed One and the religious leaders about the merits of healing on the Shabbat. He calls them out for their hypocrisy, given that they would, in quotes, break the law of Moses to fulfill their ritual of circumcision. He is not condemning circumcision which is qualified as being of the father, so that's being clarified, their circumcision separate from the father's circumcision. But instead, he's addressing their actions as it violates YHWH Elohim's instructions and covenant given through the hand of his servant Moses. So Moses was just the middleman to take pen to paper between YHWH Elohim and the people. Right, so which led the Anointed One to say the following about these leaders?
Matthew 15:7-9. You hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, this people draws nigh unto me with their mouth, and honors me with their lips, but their heart, or their mind, is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines
The commandments
of men, not of Yah.
And this is from Isaiah 29:13, and we also touched on that. In that same chapter is mentioning Abraham and the sleep situation that took place. We spoke about that, so you see how things are connecting together. Following the departure of the Anointed One to take up his role as priest, his disciples had to address the issue of circumcision. So we are coming back to Acts chapter 15 to deal with that whole narrative and what was taking place. So Acts chapter 15, this is from 1 to 8 in this section here.
And certain men which came down from Judea taught the brethren and said, except you be circumcised after the manner of Moses, you cannot be saved. When therefore Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and disputation with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain other of them should go up to Jerusalem until the apostles and elders about this question. Ask of them to go up. I didn't get that. And being brought on their way,
if by the church,
they passed through Phoenice and Samaria, declaring the conversion of the Gentiles, and they caused...
Right, stop there. Keyword, Gentiles.
And they caused great joy unto all the brethren. And when they were come to Jerusalem, they were received of the church and of the apostles and elders, and they declared all things that God had done with them. But there rose up certain of the sect of the Pharisees.
Stop right there. Keyword, Pharisees. They never went anywhere. They crept in unawares into the body and began to put their leaven. And the Anointed One, Yeshua, warned his disciples, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. It's very dangerous, and here it is crawling in. Continue.
That it was needful to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. And the apostles and elders came together, but we should be clarifying that keep the law of Moses.
It will be clarified. Yeah.
And the apostles and elders came together for to consider of this matter. And when there had been much disputing, Peter rose up and said unto them, men and brethren, you know how that a good while ago Elohim made choice among us that the Gentiles by my mouth should hear the word of the gospel and believe.
Right, so again, keyword, the Gentiles. Right, so this is from verse 8 all the way to 21.
And Elohim, which knows the hearts, bear them witness, giving them the Holy Ghost, even as he did unto us, and put no difference between us and them, purifying their hearts by faith. Now therefore, why tempt you, Elohim, to put a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? But we believe that through the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ we shall be saved, even as they. Then all the multitude kept silence and gave audience to Barnabas and Paul, declaring...
So can you stop there? So Peter is referencing the traditions here. And now Paul and Barnabas are going to speak, and then James is going to interrupt and set the record straight.
Okay. Declaring what miracles and wonders God had wrought among the Gentiles by them. And after they had held their peace, James answered, saying, men and brethren, hearken unto me.
Okay, sorry, so this is James going to set the record straight and what's going to happen next.
Simeon has declared how Elohim at the first did visit the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his name. And to this agree the words of the prophets, as it is written, after this I will return and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up, that the residue of men might seek after YHWH. And all the Gentiles upon whom my name is called, says YHWH, who doeth all these things.
Right, so this is taken from Amos 9:11. And when I was looking this up in the KJV, I was very amused. If you was to compare it in your KJV Bible, that passage with Amos, they kind of don't match. This section was taken verbatim in your KJV out of the Septuagint. Verbatim.
So Paul quoted the Septuagint.
No. James quoted from the
James
Septuagint,
quoted the
yes.
Septuagint. Okay.
Yeah. Verbatim, yeah.
Known unto Elohim are all his works from the beginning of the world. Wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles are turned to God.
So in other words, don't put those traditions on their shoulder.
Right.
Don't.
But that we write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of
Right.
idols.
So this is why the news piece is important. This is what they were instructed by James in the first set of epistles to be wrote according to Acts.
And from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood. For Moses of old time hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath
Now,
day.
this last section here, verse 21, is typically understood that if the Gentiles want to learn more, they can go to the synagogues on the Shabbat day, because there they would hear the Torah and the prophets and everything else read out, and they can ask questions.
And we should clarify the previous section of that Acts 15 when it said about the gospel. The context of that is Yeshua came to teach people to repent from, he's saying repent for the kingdom of heaven. He's saying turn away from these man-made traditions. That's a whole pretense of this. And just go back to the Torah. Go back to the 5 books, the books of the law that he created for his kingdom. Go back to that. Go back to that. So with these Gentiles coming into play here.
And the Pharisees inserting themselves.
Trying to, with their man-made traditions, this is what they're dealing with. And then, of course, that they've got, the Gentiles have a way to understand and to understand what it means to live as part of Yahweh's kingdom.
Yep.
By going to these synagogues.
So, unfortunately, a lot of people tend to take sound bites out of this narrative, and they don't give you the full picture of what is taking place in this narrative. And another thing we need to keep in mind about this whole book of Acts, it's a witness account that Luke is writing to somebody else who asked him for it. So he's just compiling information to give people. Okay, so we come to the Noahide laws because it's connected to that last section there. And the image is not that clear, but Acts chapter 15:20 is used to justify the Noahide laws, and that those who are of the Gentiles should follow them. These laws are not to be found in any section of the Bible, but it can be found in rabbinic writings.
Which is also traditions. The image to the right is from the stone edition of the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, published by Art Scroll. This can be found in the Sanhedrin 56a, which is all their written tradition stuff, and attributed to Rambam as the one who codified these laws.
Right, so that's Maimonides, as some people in that line would know him as. So it's Moses ben Nachman, and he's also known as Maimonides or Nachmanides, depending on which phonetics you used. So unfortunately, it's not that clear, but when it goes up on the website, it would be. So these are the Noahide laws that they like to push on people, and there are 7 laws. So the first is being idolatry. Keep away from that. You're supposed to bless the divine name. Should not murder. Sexual transgressions. Theft. Court systems. Eating a lamb torn from a live animal. And Maimonides also tried to put together a collection of writings known as the Guide to the Perplexed. I tried reading it a few years ago, and it was boring. It's just a lot of stuff in it. So don't go read the Mind to the Perplexed.
Well, you could.
You could, but it's a boring read. And I wasn't reading it to learn anything. I was reading it to see what their whole narrative was about in that document.
As per the rituals in Judaism, the one who circumcises is called a mohel.
And we spoke about that word before. So this is the religious rite that they're talking about here.
The noun mohel in Aramaic, circumciser, is derived from the same verb stem as milah, circumcision. The noun appeared for the first time in the 4th century as the title of circumciser.
And
Again, this is extra biblical. This is not
even
a biblical way to
call
do.
this extra biblical. This is again from the Talmud in Shabbat 156a.
And Talmud is, just to clarify,
That's the book that the rabbinic Jews use for their law, and unfortunately sometimes it's conflated with the Torah and the Bible.
Yeah, and they choose that over
That
the
has
Bible.
more prominence over the Bible. Okay.
Circumcised. Oh, sorry. This was the crux of the matter. The audience and the context of the covenant, with every reference about circumcision as it pertains to Gentiles, and the religious influence that was pushing against the community after the anointed ones, Yeshua's departure. Apart from the religious influence that is ever present, the issue of circumcision is being
conflated, which means mix, blends, fuse, unite, integrate. So no, they don't. I think sometimes it's done intentionally to conflate it rather than to make it clear.
As there is a distinction between Hebrew and Gentile, and this is what James was trying to put back into the box and supply proper context. Apart from being generational, anyone bought for money and of the stranger in the tent of Abraham is subject to the clauses of circumcision in the covenant.
And this morning when I was reading from Kings with Solomon dedicating the temple, I read this and I thought it had to be included in the Bible study.
1 Kings 8, 41 to 43. And for the stranger who is not of your people, when they shall come and pray toward this place, then you shall hear them from heaven, out of your established dwelling place, and thou shalt do according to all that the stranger shall call upon you for, and that all the nations may know your name and fear you, as do your people Israel, and may know that your name has been called on this house which I have builded.
And we know that with Abraham, the stranger is also included in his tent. So I included it here for reference as well.
Same terms.
Yes, same terms. So I have a question, and it's very convoluted. I hope that my grammar is good. If Yeshua, Jesus, ransom, redeem, or the kingsman, redeemer us, and he is subject to the law as per the covenant, and we referenced his words already, and are his servants, so we are supposed to be servants. What does this mean for male believers in him? And again, anybody who is a servant in the tent has to be circumcised. So if we are applying all of these references to ourselves, what does it mean?
So, it means so much more if we say we're following Jesus, right?
Instead of using these nice catchphrases, because we're putting ourselves into a lot of trouble. Mostly men.
It's a lot deeper than what you're actually saying a lot of times. Mm-hmm.
Mostly men. That's why I said mean for male believers in him. Mm-hmm. So now we're in Genesis 17, 13, and 14.
He that is born in your house and he that is bought with money shall be surely circumcised. And my covenant shall be on your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male who shall not be circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin on the 8th day, that soul shall be utterly destroyed from its family, for he has broken my covenant.
Strong words.
Very strong words.
And we're going to look at being cut off. The one who does not take heed to the covenant of the lineage of Abraham is to be cut off. As was read, if there are males over the age of 8 days old that are not circumcised, they should be cut off. Luckily, the women are exempt, as with many other instructions in the scripture. So the women would not be cut off. It's the men, if they don't do it, would be cut off. What exactly does this mean, being cut off? And it's called karat. Right,
being cut off from his people, as noted in Leviticus 23:29, is a small phrase with monumental meaning. The phrase is rendered differently in various translations of the Bible, and it is stated differently in other verses. Other passages render the concept as cut off from the tents of Jacob, and sometimes as stricken from the register of Israel. These all mean the same thing, and what they actually mean is damnation. The register of Israel is actually another term for the book of life. I just read that today. This is completely logical because of the performance terms of the Torah. If one's sins are not forgiven, then obviously they will be counted against him. Since atonement was the means of reconciliation, it obviously was important that the one made avail of that provision.
So here's our take on this. Just as the foreskin is cut off for karat and discarded, the same would happen to the man that is of the tent of Abraham, who chooses not to acknowledge the agreement that Yahuwah made with Abraham. In Hebrew words, there is action as part of the vocalization. So Hebrew is also action as well as speaking. The foreskin may seem trivial, but is part of the reproductive organ of the man that represents his ability to procreate the next generation. It is a visual reminder of disagreement and reinforces that the man must be aware, responsible, and manage his house with integrity. Final words.
A humble reminder to TeamD and everyone who engages with us is to put our trust in Yahuwah and in all our ways acknowledge Him. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. As individuals, our heart's desire should be to know Him and His ways and to seek Him with our whole heart, a heart that is receptive, you can see Psalm 51:17, and open for Him to circumcise and cast away the part that is not needed in our life. Though this study's theme is my covenant, it could have easily been called circumcision dilemma. Circumcision is not a salvation issue. It is the visual reminder in the flesh of men of the agreement between YHWH Elohim and his blameless servant Abraham. It is for the land promised to him and his seed that is binding on the house of Abraham forever or for a very long time. If a man believes in his heart that he is of the tent of Abraham and feels compelled to get circumcised, then why not? Otherwise, it would be ill-advised to get circumcised without understanding what it is truly about. For any man that has this weighing on his heart, let YHWH Elohim take you to the point of making the right decision on this issue. As for women, Ruth is your example. And that's Ruth 1:16. And Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave you," and she's saying this to Naomi, "or to return from following you. For whithersoever you go, I will go, and wheresoever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your Elohim my Elohim."
And Emet and Amen.
Truth, let it be so.
Comments, questions? Oh my God.
So I don't think this is as complicated as so many people make it out to be. Because like when you were referencing the part about when they were to come to the synagogue and then be taught. So when you think back to a child born, they weren't circumcised till the 8th day. That proves right there, knowing like symbolically that the Sabbath day, the 7th day, is the Sabbath day of rest, that all covenant children in Israel passed through the day of rest, meaning it isn't a salvation issue because they weren't commanded to be circumcised till the 8th day. So it's not about salvation. That group came preaching, to be saved, you have to circumcise yourself. But what the scripture declares is no, they're preaching the good news, but the good news was, we're saved through faith. So you come through faith, right? By grace, and then onto the works prepared in advance for you. So by faith, those Gentile believers would become saved, and by faith, right? And then they would go sit in the synagogue and hear all that was being taught, right? And then as an issue of the heart, the circumcision of the heart, they would normally step into that covenant. That's kind of how it should go. But it's not a salvation issue where, excuse me, it was a demand, right? It's not about that. It's about saying, that part about Ruth, like I'm entering into this because I believe by faith that I'm part of the covenant. And Gentile means out of covenant. So there's no such thing as Gentile believer. Like, it's no, you're in covenant or out of covenant. You can't be out of covenant and say you're a believer. So you come to that by faith.
And then the key word there is the Pharisees, and they leave it out because the Pharisees were inserting themselves into the new paradigm.
And just trying to cause confusion in the yoke. Put the yoke on. Where what they needed to learn is, and what Nichelle was saying is just that they wanted to learn the kingdom ways. They're learning what it means to live in the kingdom, and as we all are.
So
Continue to. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have a tough question. I didn't include it in the slides, but I'm going to ask it. The instructions given by James, is it to be taken seriously or is it to be ignored?
The initial things that he told for those believers, the
What
new
they
believers.
what they need to do. You know, about the
Well-
idolatry, strangled things, the blood, etc. Is it an instruction that should be heeded or should it be ignored?
Wasn't it just sort of get them started on this, and then, as they go along, they'll learn more?
Well, and the thing is, I'm thinking, and I'm just playing a lawyer here, a bush lawyer. Let me put on my bush lawyer hat. Now, is his words binding as something legal that he's saying? Is it a suggestion or is it a legal command? That's the question I'm asking.
I think it had ramifications that he understood.
Yes.
But he was saying, this is just what we need to
Mhm.
teach these new guys. They're coming in, they know nothing of our ways. These are the paramount things. Don't let them eat food sacrificed to idols.
Just get them.
Stop the fornicating. Do the bare minimum, and then go to Shabbat and go to the synagogue and hear what is being preached, and the rest of it all starts falling into place as your heart is led. Because everything that we do has to be led by faith. Because we're supposed to walk by faith, not by sight, which is what a lot of these Pharisees decided to do. They knew the letter of the law. Sorry, I'm loud anyway. They knew the letter of the law, right? But it didn't bring the spirit and life. So it's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about having the depth of understanding to why you're doing it that is bringing you into that covenant.
And something we have to remember is like to love Yahweh because he first loved us. In Hebrew mindset, the word love demanded a response. Like there's a response, there's a call to action with our loving him back. And that's why you're my king. This is your king. This is your kingdom. I'm going to follow your ways. I'm not going to justify or try to make it my own way. I'm going to follow what you said. And your words are pure. They've been tested, just like we sang earlier today. They're true. Purified 7 times. Perfect.
Any other questions, comments? Well, the beautiful thing, that's the only difficult topic we are going to be covering for a long while. And it's not that difficult. It's just that we mix things up. We use words that shouldn't be used. And we need to understand what a word means, how it's applied, in order to get context as to what is happening. And that's the big problem with anything pertaining to circumcision and where, in quotes, a believer stands. So once we read the word as it is written without any bias,
Or
Or
filters we've been given.
it's going to unfold itself for you to understand and see what's happening. Well, no other comments? We are going to call it a night and thank everyone for coming.
Yes.